Hi, and welcome to the Intentional Wealth Update from Morton Brown Family Wealth for the week of September 6th, Labor Day week 2021. I'm Dennis Morton here with Katie Brown. Katie, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you, Dennis?
Good, good. So today we're highlighting a piece by JP Morgan entitled Mystery No More, Portfolio Allocation, Income, and Spending in Retirement. And we pulled this article forward because it really got us thinking about turning the whole spending in retirement conversation on its head, and also some of the things that people do entering into retirement that might not be in their best interest. So, Katie, this study really covered a couple of things. Talked about risk, talked about required distributions, talked about spending. What did we learn from this article?
A lot. I think it was really interesting. If we start with the risk conversation first, it's almost like this switch gets flipped when people go to retirement and they say, oh my goodness, I need to take risk off the table.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going into retirement. And they highlighted that 75% of people reduce the amount of risk when they roll over their retirement plan to an IRA. And the more equity exposure, stock exposure risk that they had leading up to that point, the greater that number was, the greater reduction they made going to retirement. So like I said, like flipping that switch, which it was just a little steeper than I would have expected, and more people participating than I would have expected.
Right. And it's something we've talked about before with target date funds. If you follow a target date fund and take a 2020 or 2025 Vanguard target date fund, it has a lot more in stock than you think, because they're assuming that this person who's retiring at age 65 is going to live another 25 or 30 years, and you're not just shutting it down when you walk away. And that's like an underappreciated thing. So if you were to leave a target date fund alone, it's going to stay pretty risky even in the early years of retirement. Yeah, I think the number was they studied 31,000 people, 31,000 retirees as they approached retirement before 2018. So these weren't de-risking into the pandemic. This is, de-risking into a bull market. And 75% of those 31,000 de-risked when they rolled over from a 401k to an IRA.
Yeah. And I think that one of the lessons in there was to just be careful about making such a drastic switch so quickly. And maybe it's wiser to kind of wade into it, because then they highlighted, if this were to happen in the first quarter of 2020 as things were selling off, you might have sold off when stocks were low, and then you didn't participate in the recovery going forward. So you really kind of, you limited some of those returns going forward. So it's okay to pull some risk off the table, just be a little bit measured in how you do it.
Yeah, I'd lump this in with some of the rules of thumb, whether it's the 4% withdrawal rule or de-risking or everything else. They're nice guidelines, but as someone wiser than me once said, there are no rules in the trenches. Like when you're kind of living in the real world, you can't just blanket say, all right, I retired today, I'm going to do this and it's going to work out. You have to acknowledge the world that you're living in, and it might not be exactly the right time. Good point. So the other thing they talked about was required minimum distributions. This was interesting. So they said the vast majority, 80% of those people younger than RMD age, which right now is 72, back in this study it was 70 and a half, were not taking withdrawals, meaning they were waiting to the point where they had to take money out and then only taking that amount out. This is where things got a little bit interesting on how to spend down retirement assets. What did you take away from the RMD conversation?
Well, I think one of the things, and I feel like we explain this often enough, or these questions come up often enough, that required minimum distribution is exactly that. That's the minimum amount that you have to take out. And I think sometimes that's viewed as that's the rule of how much to take out, that you can't necessarily take out more. It's almost like there's this, assumption that this is my budget, when that may not be your budget. That amount may not have anything to do with, once again, you have to take that out because the IRS says it, but that doesn't mean that you can't take out more depending on the other pieces of your financial world, or supplement it from a different account. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit. But I think there are some misconceptions around that required minimum distribution amount, and just acknowledging you can take out more as long as the plan and your goals and everything allow for it.
Right. And they use the term talking about taking a goals-based approach, which kind of crossed my wires for a minute, because I think, well, goals are sustaining wealth throughout retirement or making sure you have a certain amount of performance or whatever it might be. They said, no, the goal should be, what are you going to spend money on when you're in your peak years? If you retire at 65, age 66 might be your healthiest, most active era. You should be spending more there because when you're 85 or 90, your expenses are going to be much less. So they called it a very inefficient way to spend because your goal should be to spend more in early retirement and less in later. And he says, otherwise, you end up with more money when you need it less. And that doesn't really make sense when you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, there's always the wild card of healthcare. I think that's a lot of concern for people, making sure that they have enough of a cushion there. But if we're running some of those projections and say, okay, here's your bucket, we know that we have, and oftentimes we'll do that in the financial plans that we'll put together. We'll say, all right, what would it look like if we were to spend down our assets? But here's our floor. Don't go beyond that, because beyond that, that's the emergency reserve. But really kind of looking at, what could you spend in the earlier years of retirement and still have some emergency reserves on hand, but really make the most of those earlier years when maybe you do travel more or you're spoiling your grandchildren, whatever the case may be.
And you can't blame investors for having this mentality, because if say you're retiring at age 65, but in those years leading up, you might be wondering, do I have enough? Am I saving enough? And you're saving. And then to flip a switch and say, all right, now I'm going to spend a lot because these are my active years. That's a big leap to get to, your mindset wise. And I think that's where it comes back to, the advisor's awareness to say, maybe you need to help with the permission there and say, like, listen, this can be sustained, but we monitor it, right? It's not like we can do this all the time and just let it be, but monitor that over time. And I think the advisor can help with the permission element of that.
Mm-hmm. Which I think gets into the spending part of the article too, that basically highlighted that if people have, pensions, annuities, dependable income streams, they're more likely to spend more, even if their balance sheet looks the same as somebody else. But if, one person has most of their money in investment and the other person has most of their money in something that's kicking off an income stream, then the person with the income is more likely to spend more. So I think one of the keys there is figuring out what that retirement paycheck looks like and recognizing that income does not have to be all that different from investments, that those investments can convert over to that income. So let's make sure we're setting up paychecks and things kind of feel normal, like they do during your working years. Like you have the money coming in and it's okay to have that money coming in.
It's okay to do it. Right. It's all mindset. Very good. So we had an exciting little celebration this morning. We have a milestone in the firm. This week marks Katie Brown's 20th year in the financial industry. So Katie, congratulations. Thanks for all you do in the industry. I wanted to ask you, what's your most important epiphany over that 20-year period? You kind of held a lot of roles, engaged with a lot of clients. What really was an aha moment for you over the last 20 years?
Yeah, and you're right. I have been very, very, very fortunate to have played a lot of different roles within this industry. But I think one of the biggest epiphanies, and it didn't come at a specific time, but I think through the aggregation of different little events along the way, really recognizing that it's not all about the dollars. My job is not to help my clients make the most amount of money for themselves. My job is to recognize and help support them in whatever decisions they're making so that they're confident and comfortable in what they're doing. Yeah. And sometimes that's making decisions that may not otherwise be the best financial decisions, but it's going to allow them to live their best life. And so I think, accepting that and recognizing that and embracing it and getting excited about that has really been a shift in my mindset during my career.
And I think that's something unique that you've brought to the table, even in the ethos of the firm, is that I remember we were talking years ago about, like, what is the desired outcome? What are we trying to get to here? And you just said confidence. Like, that's, if we can get to confidence, then the numbers become secondary, and everything's relative to someone, to where they are, meeting them where they are, and what inspires confident decisions. So thanks for all your work. Congratulations on 20 years. Here's the next 20. And if you have any questions regarding retirement income or any of the topics we covered today, let us know. If there's a topic you'd like to hear us talk more about, shoot us an email or check us out at www.mortonbrownfw.com. Hope everyone has a great last couple of weeks of summer, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Take care.